Distinguished.
Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with Toby Birch, who is a senior investment manager at Gower Financial Services. We're going to review the last quarter and then take a look at the forthcoming UK budget. All opinions are personal and no investment advice is being given. Toby, as ever, good to see you.
And you as well, Tony.
Right, let's start off with your review over the last 3 months. Been a bit strange, hasn't it? It's, sort of rippling up and down. Nothing too spectacular.
Yes, we've had quite a choppy summer, all in all. For the for like a UK investor, the pound's been strong, so any overseas investment has left you pretty much flat. So the States and Japan are slightly negative for a sterling investor, and the UK is up by a couple of percent. In local currency terms, America is positive, up 5%, but again, that currency effect has kicked in. But I think that the main positive we've had is that 0.5% rate cut in the States, which was the top end of expectations. The one thing that I was concerned about was that whenever you get the first of a much expected rate cut in a series, you often get a market sell-off,
Hmm.
and this is called the Fed pivot. I think what's happened this time is that the market has rallied because that kind of negative effect has already happened in the summer. We saw a big sell-off in tech in particular. Overall, I think it's a very healthy correction that we had. So I'm actually quite positive going forward.
Half of 1% is quite a slice, isn't it? Because the Bank of England being a bit on the timid side, just a quarter of 1%.
Yes, I think our inflation traditionally has been a lot more sticky than that in the States. I mean, they've got their own issues over a big part of their consumer price index is rental costs, which in the good times are kind of flat, but now are really coming home to roost because all the added costs of utilities and interest rate costs as well. So we spoke about this paradox before that putting up interest rates actually makes inflation worse in some cases
Yeah.
to increase this rental burden.
So generally speaking, are you reasonably happy with the way the quarter has performed? I mean, it seems to have strengthened
Yeah.
in the last few weeks, hasn't it?
That's right. We're getting a last minute reprieve. I was concerned about this potential Fed pivot, but just as we approach the end of the quarter, I think net, as long as we're not seeing any losses for clients, and that's the first goal, and any gain on top of the positive gains this year is all good. I think let's go into the next quarter. We've got the US elections. We get that out the way. We could be on standby for a pretty good run. I mean, some people are comparing this with the mid 1990s, which was kind of the glory days when I was starting my in this job,
Yeah.
and we had a really good run in spite of all the worries at the time.
Yeah. UK inflation
Mm.
sort of flatlining at 2.2%. Uh,
It is for now. I mean, the interest rates are reflecting this. So yes, we had one rate cut, but we're expected to cut rates probably less quickly in the States because of our kind of our sticky inflation. Obviously, got a lot of wage rises going through, and as ever, the spending never seems to cease by government. So it is still quite an undercurrent of inflation, which although it's stable and low, it's kind of not going away.
I mean, do have we got any idea? We've seen the train drivers get quite a massive increase. We've seen the doctors get an even larger increase. Not talking about the rights and wrongs at this stage,
Sure.
but just looking at it from the point of view of the effect on inflation. Do you think that's going to take, is it going to push it up a bit?
Yeah, but wages do have an impact, and it's also aside from more pay, which yes is not necessarily a bad thing. Um, the kind of risk longer term is that the more indebted you become, the less faith people have in the currency, and then you get this devaluation effect. So it's not about supply and demand; it's about the money itself becoming watered down. But that's a tale for another day, hopefully. It won't happen too soon.
Tell me, do you swallow this business about the black hole, the 22 billion pound black hole, which,
No,
you know,
no, not at all. I mean, it's an
it's
absurdity. I mean,
political?
yeah, Jeremy Hunt quite rightly called this a spurious statement. I mean, this data was known before Labour got to power, and the Treasury itself, audited these numbers, and it was all known. And the other spurious aspect, which you need to highlight, is that 22 billion as a proportion of the total, about 1,200 billion. I hate to say drop in the ocean, but it really is scaremongering by Labour. And if they want to make some changes, I mean, this is the time to do it early on.
Yeah.
Um, so you can see it as just more of a political thing. But overall, yeah, my overall feeling is that they're trying to sort of raise fears, for pensioners and the like. And all of a sudden, when the budget comes out, the bill, oh, we're all nice and friendly. We've listened
Yeah,
to
and
you,
not
and
quite as bad as we,
yeah,
led you to believe, as it were.
yeah,
I mean, the
it's
fact of
still.
the matter is the national debt's still 2.7 trillion.
Mhm.
And I was looking in I don't know whether you saw this in the Telegraph today, but somebody's come up with a different type of index,
Okay.
which effectively allows more borrowing without affecting the bottom
Right.
line. I don't get that one.
Yeah. Well, the law is all kind of it's equivalent of sort of off balance sheet
Yeah.
activities by banks in the past. I think I think you used the phrase "chickens coming home to roost,"
Yes.
and but one day, well, I mean, I quite often use the analogy of Buckaroo, the children's game. You keep loading stuff up and nothing happens. So you think, oh, that's okay. We'll keep doing the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of a sudden there's a loss of confidence. And
Yeah.
this happened also, in the Weimar Republic and plenty of other cases where you get a debt trap. You can't afford to pay even the interest, let alone pay off the debt. And all of a sudden it just get this swan dive out of nowhere. So this is something for the future, and I'm sure it'll happen. But ultimately, it looks like there's going to be some kind of reset of the bond market going forward. But again, it's best not to speculate just yet.
Because, we've seen these sort of situations with Argentina in the past, haven't we? And
Yeah,
some of
yeah.
the African countries that effectively
Venezuela.
go bust, and there you
Yeah,
go.
in spite of having massive commodity reserves as well.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, it's time to look into your crystal ball, Toby,
Mm.
as to the
Yeah.
budget and what your thoughts are, because, it appears that it's going to hit everybody. First of all, that winter fuel heating allowance,
Mm.
you know, I think that's most unfair, and I've
It,
never
it
received it.
is. Yeah, I think it's you need to remember you're dealing with a government that has an ideology and logic. It does not often form a base of this. I mean, Stalin himself is a Fabian society proponent, and this is a generally far left
Mm,
ideology, and it's about just not rushing through change, but letting things happen over time. It's based on a Roman general who wouldn't actually engage the enemy. You just kind of keep running away and gradually wear them down. So these type of socialists have a very long-term ambition to utterly take over the country with far left doctrine.
yeah.
And although he wears that nice suit and tie, he reminds me of the uh, left-wing people in Liverpool, my childhood, militant tendency,
Well,
all dressed very smartly, but
Derek Hatton, and
yeah,
people like
yeah,
that. Yeah, yeah. No,
it's very
I think you.
sinister.
You see, the
Yeah,
thing is that they're saying, oh, well, it won't matter because they get the benefit of the triple lot rise. But that doesn't happen till next April, after the winter. And that
that's
really,
right.
you know,
Yeah,
how many
I
do they
think
want to kill?
yeah, I mean, I think 4,000 figures the figure for the number of dead, but from their point of view, older people probably are less likely to vote for Labour, and that sounds very harsh
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
extreme.
yeah. But I mean, that's the
This
fact, isn't it?
It's the
Yeah.
mindset we're dealing with.
Mm,
The ideology doesn't care about human life.
yeah. Now, Rishi Sunak aggressively brought down national insurance contributions. Labour haven't said anything about putting those back up again. So do you think they'll stay
Mm.
as they are?
I think for now that they'll probably stay put. I mean, the big thing again, you can't always believe what people say, before elections, but the idea was that working people wouldn't be paying more, or the tax rate wouldn't change. So this would fit into that kind of definition. But speaking of definition, I think Starmer said that anyone definition of someone who's middle class is anyone with savings, which is quite quite
Scary.
yeah, quite scary. That means everyone's fair game.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe for technicality they might not change the the contribution rates, but it's just a matter of time before everyone gets more taxes.
As my generation dies, there's a lot of money to be harvested in the form of inheritance tax, isn't there?
Mm. Yeah, but again, all tax has unintended consequences, and whenever you raise a tax, you get less tax revenue.
Yeah.
We've discussed this a few times before, and what you may find is that it just clogs up the property market. I mean, estate agents will tell you it's all very well having a high price on something, but if there's no activity or movement, then the market really grinds to a halt, and prices start to fall. So this idea of increasing inheritance tax or removing bans,
Mm.
um, it will have an effect, and it's the last thing that it's kind of the golden goose that it's the last thing that anyone's had any benefit from, particularly for the older generation. And the idea is you're meant to be handing that down to the next generation,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
they will lose out in both ways. So younger generation have more expensive housing, and they won't be able to get as much benefit as we did.
I mean, do you think that the potentially exempt transfers, the pets scheme, whereby if you give your money to your children and you
Mm.
survive 7 years, it's out of the IHT ban. Do you think they'll take a whack at that?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of little sort of death by a thousand cuts of
Yeah.
benefits, even like giving money to grandchildren for weddings or as an annual
Mm.
allowance. I'm sure they'll all be sort of gradually skimmed away and removed, so it just becomes a really high tax jurisdiction with little encouragement for people to stay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Capital gains tax, a lot of things being talked about there. And the chances are that, if you're on 45% income tax, your capital gain would be calculated at the same rate. Now, from an investment perspective, is that going to put people off investing in the market?
It's not just that. I mean, the UK is a backwater anyway for stock market investing. So if you pile this on top of it, there's no real incentive. But also from an entrepreneurial point of view, you are you just there's no encouragement to invest. You're going to keep getting whacked. And to take it to the next extreme in the States under with the Democrats, they're thinking of having a kind of wealth tax or capital gains on unrealized assets. So you could be sitting in a $1 million house
Yeah.
and you have to pay a value of the capital, even though it's not realized. So all this taxation ideology is just a race to the bottom,
Mm.
and the government won't be happy until they own you, full stop.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, if you take the capital gains tax situation, it's going to affect a lot of landlords on the mainland, isn't it? In terms of, the fact that they're relying on the rent, and then suddenly they decide to sell because everything tightens up so much
Yeah,
against them as landlords, and they
yeah,
suddenly get hit for a whacking great amount of CGT.
that's
It's
right. They're not ideal. It's like sort of banks and energy companies. They're all one of these great evildoers who must be
yes,
punished.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Greedy
yeah,
landlords.
yeah, yeah,
And of course,
yeah,
as ever, the less you have, the more rents go up. My daughter's just moved to London. Her rent was 20,000 for a year.
Wow, yeah.
Um, and you take away the supply, and eventually no one can rent. Who's going
Mm.
to do the basic jobs? It's just completely unaffordable.
Yeah, yeah. What about corporation tax? I mean, we were all hoping that universally
Mm.
corporation tax would fall to about 15% or something like that. Not much hope of that, is there?
No, and again, it just keeps going back to this idea that putting up taxes decreases the tax take. And it's a friend of mine, Liam Halligan, who writes in the Telegraph, who wrote a very good piece on this, showing that when corporation tax rates are coming down,
Yeah.
the tax collection went up. So, but again, if you're an ideologist, the
You
facts
don't
don't matter.
believe it.
You've got to, it's always an enemy which isn't you. It's got to be punished, and he's an enemy of the people, and of course, it's the exact opposite. So it's just sad. It's lovely being here in the Channel Islands. We don't have these kind of issues, but it's sad to watch your old
Mm,
mother country
yeah.
actually going down the pan.
Yeah, this is how I feel about it. And of course, we got the VAT. There are certain items that are currently exempt, but I'm sure they'll find an excuse to sort of put on an amount because it doesn't have to be 20%, does it? It
Sure.
can,
Sure.
can be anything up to 20%. Private schools, children's clothes.
Yeah.
Um,
it,
yeah,
it just goes on. It falls back into this philosophical argument again. I know from my old school at rugby that when I was younger, you had middle class parents who could
mm,
afford to send you. Now that's out of the question.
yeah,
So you get a lot of wealthy foreign kids who want to send their
yeah,
get rid of boarding school, and the sad thing is that they miss out on the sort of British aspect of boarding schools, which is what the parents are paying for to
mm,
get and
yeah,
have
yeah,
that back. And so the schools do recognise this, and there's lot of charitable foundations that will help UK based and poorer families send their children to these schools, but this really doesn't help. And it's not this idea of uh, punishing the sort of the so-called elite
mm.
is in theory going to benefit everyone else. And of course, they're saying it's going to create another 6,000 teaching posts, but I think there's something like 20,000 schools in the UK. So it's like
Yeah, it's
there's
nothing, is it?
a teacher here and there.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, if I was still paying school fees, if I suddenly had a 20% whack, you know, it's a lot of money, isn't it?
This is not doing a lot of people on even locally day schools. Parents are really suffering to put the children through it since the grammar schools were um, removed locally. Then
Mm,
more and more parents want to make sure they get the very best education they can.
mm, mm. So really, they should be incentivized as opposed to being,
Yeah,
yeah,
again, it doesn't fit the philosophy there.
no, not at all. Right. Well, you mentioned a windfall tax just now in terms of the banks and the oil and
Mhm.
gas providers. That's a likely ploy, presumably.
Indeed, I keep I sound like a broken record, but for the energy companies, if you believe that carbon has an effect on the climate, which I don't, and you want to decarbonize, then the main investors in this are the large
Mm,
fossil fuel
yeah.
producers, and they also re-establish themselves as alternative energy providers. But yeah, if you have these taxes, then it again, even on an individual basis, we talked about earlier, on a corporate basis, it completely disincentivizes you. And the knock-on effect is that production levels they're already going down. And lo and behold, energy prices go up. So Britain has got one of that has energy costs many times higher than the States.
Yeah.
For precisely this reason, this transition ideology is taken over. And in the meanwhile, the Americans are going, full scale ahead of this with shale and all the rest
Yeah,
of it.
fracking as if there's no tomorrow,
Yeah.
and making it
Not
work from that
stupid.
point of view.
Yeah.
I suppose you could say the banks, were given a big favour in 2008 when we had the financial
Yeah.
crisis in terms of keeping them afloat. But
Mm.
the trouble is, Toby, every time you hit any organization,
Mhm.
as you say, prices go up, but prospective dividend payments could go down. And if you take
Yeah. Yeah.
BP and Shell, for example, they're major providers of money to
Mm.
the pension funds and
Exactly. Yeah.
other investments. So, you know, do they realize this?
I think again, you had Gordon Brown when he removed the dividend tax allowance and pension funds. It all affects the long-term cash flow and builds up deficits.
Yeah.
And I just don't. I struggle sometimes to understand because there's some very bright civil servants and government people that and maybe it's just a feature of modern living that no one peels back the onion or looks more than one step ahead at the time. Maybe it's all just about sound bites now, but there are very few strategists left there anywhere that I can see.
And they never remember anything.
Yeah, of
Okay.
course.
You have a banking crisis every 15 years, for example.
Hmm.
And they've never sort of worked out, oh, we did it so and so last time round and
Yeah,
to avoid it this time round.
yeah, yeah.
It's a mad
It's
old world, isn't it?
yeah. I think it's old phrase that yeah, if you study history, you can see what's coming in the future. But if you do
Mm.
study it, all you have to do is watch other people repeat the same mistakes. So it's double frustration. Mm.
It seems that there's likely to be a tax on pension lump sums when people draw their pensions. They might perhaps have 100,000 as a
Mm.
tax-free zone, but once again, it's a bit of a betrayal, isn't it, of what we've all assumed was going to be the case. Um,
That's
it,
right.
it just seems to me that lots of people put money into pension plans
Mm.
over the years, thinking that they would get the 25%. It would be tax free. They could use that money for paying off their mortgage, various other bits and pieces, and it
Yeah.
looks as if that's going to be hit. And I think that's
Agreed.
immoral.
Yeah, and it's also the bank of mum and dad effect. I mean, it's very common that this lump sum is used for the next generation,
Hmm.
and and that's gone. So the younger generation is being betrayed as well, not just the pensioners.
Yeah, yeah. This is a really a bit of a dirge, this interview, isn't it?
It is, sorry about it's kind of it's sort of, I'm being
But
triggered. I'm afraid. Like,
but I should
anti-government.
say at this stage, Robert McDowell is going to speak the day after the budget. He's going to be
Oh,
on the day
okay.
after the budget, so
Right.
we'll have to see what we've been talking about, whether or not it does come to pass.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sort of looking at the taxation point of view, the last one on the list is council tax, the single person exemption. Once again, it's going to hit the elderly, the widowed person, isn't it?
Yes, it's I think something like is it 25% off the council tax if you're living alone.
Yeah.
It's also, there's a lot more young single people as well. It's not just the elderly. It all just seems so mean and Scrooge-like, and
Mm,
yet I say the deficits themselves are massive, and a large part of this so-called budget black hole is has material costs from asylum seekers and Ukraine.
mm.
Yeah, this is just kind of just throw money at the proxy war out east, and the public are left to pay for it, whether they agree with it or not.
I mean, I was a great fan of Margaret Thatcher, still am.
Yeah.
Um, that idea of the poll tax wasn't quite so silly when you think about it, because it was based on the numbers of people in a house using the
Mm.
services. Now, if you take the current situation, you've got a 25% reduction if you're a single occupier, as far as council tax is concerned. But if you're a multi-occupier and you pay the full rate, you can have as many people as you like in your family
Mm.
effectively using all the services.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, good point. Yeah.
So, there we are. That's Tony's thought for the day from that point of view. Interest rates slow, we have talked earlier about this,
Mm.
slowly moving down, but nothing too spectacular from that point of view.
Yeah. If you look at the US futures markets and the bond markets,
Mm,
they imply in the States uh, rates of about 3.5% next year. And in our case, it's close to 4%. So we can talk about sticky inflation, and we also have the sticky interest rate. So
yeah,
it'll be be at these sort of levels for quite a while, I believe.
yeah, yeah, fair enough. Now, what's the market going to do in terms of if some or all of these things we're talking about comes to pass? What's the market going to do, or do you think markets have already factored in some of this potential bad news?
There's an element of that factoring already, and as we've mentioned previously, the kind of the pressure valve for UK politics is the pound itself.
Yeah.
So if things are looking pretty grim, the pound will weaken. We've seen some strength, which in itself is quite a good thing for inflation as well.
Mm.
But I think on the whole, I think this is likely to be a case of more of like a slow decline in the UK, remembering that much of the FTSE 100 is
Yeah.
overseas based, so you
Yeah.
won't necessarily see it in the stock market.
No.
I mean, the ideal scenario is to get a stronger pound, stronger market, and the budget aspect will hit the consumers and retail rather than the big companies on the on the exchange itself.
Investment into the UK. I mean, presumably a lot of international investors are going to think twice about this now, aren't they?
Yeah, in the UK, as I mentioned before, it's kind of a backwater anyway.
Mm.
And for those firms that are domestically based, What they don't want to do is list in the UK, because if they list in America, all of a sudden the premium which they get for being listed in the States is much higher. So as shareholders, you're going to get a bigger bang for your buck as a founder.
Yeah.
It's just less attractive. I mean, again, listing costs are just unimaginable nowadays. It's I keep using this phrase "slow decay," but it's just one of many symptoms that we're seeing. And you look back and think, well, a lot of our assets got privatized and are foreign owned anyway. And again, it's coming full circle. I mean, we'll
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
talk about it in a minute
Yeah. Yeah.
about how things haven't worked out very well on this front. You know.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing them talking about renationalizing the railways by default. In other words, not actually paying anybody anything, but not
Mm,
renewing the franchises when they come up, in a few years' time.
yeah. I
This
mean,
is,
if
does
you,
this mean the return of the cheese sandwich?
that's slightly stale. It kind of, if you think about it, the idea of capitalism is to make goods cheaper and more available.
Yeah,
And it's kind of a win-win. And it's gone the other way. Rail is now more expensive than flying, and it's less dependable. You've also got the strikes as well. So it's kind of it hasn't worked. And is nationalisation the answer? Do you want government running anything? Um,
mm,
I don't know. We'll wait and see. But uh, I think I think as you hinted, that is probably the likely case that they'll be allowed to mature and
yeah,
be taken over. So yeah,
yeah, yeah. And then, of course, the other basket case is Thames Water, isn't it?
it's just it just goes from bad to worse. I mean, I think it's just been given £1 billion lifeline from the sort of hedge funds and the like. Really, I think in many ways that's just trying to stop it going bust.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
robbing people to pay Paul. I
But
mean,
it's go
it's still
ahead.
followed out anyway. That
Yeah,
and we all know about this the kind of sewage in the Thames and the like. It's just appalling. And again, this isn't capitalism. This is uh, a sort of crony version where the private equity have just skimmed off the dividends and left us, like 15 billion of debt versus a billion in cash. It's very sad. Yeah.
I mean, if you're running a company like Thames Water, for example, is there not an argument for not paying any dividends if you're going, if you've got the sort of borrowing deficit that they've got?
Yeah, I mean, this is a case in point, and uh, philosophically, the kind of shareholders they've had in the past really kind of use dividends to yank money
Hmm.
out of the system when borrowing was cheap. Now that borrowing's gone up, you can't really do this. I mean, there's some good sovereign wealth funds who are owners, and um, I think they would rather have a haircut on dividends than just lose all the money. It
Yeah,
looks very bad for them.
yeah, yeah,
This is
yeah.
your country's money.
And I think, despite the fact that Sir Keir wouldn't admit it at the time, the non-doms are gradually leaving, and
Mm,
I think that from the point of view of seeing house sales, talking about really expensive property in London, that
mm.
seems to be seizing up totally.
Yeah, this is we've seen quite a bit of activity. I know Jersey pushing hard, not just for non-doms, but also for hedge fund managers based in the UK
Yeah,
to relocate over to Jersey. So they've got they're basically called the substance rules, where you can't just like say apples run from Jersey. It's not really, you're not just like funneling money through. But if you have your actual business there, then that really does fit the substance criteria, and you get all kind of multiplier effects from having these businesses based in offshore. But on an individual basis as well, we got obviously SARK is being heralded for UK and Irish citizens as a place to go. And you don't have to live there all year. You can have a base there and pay a lot less tax. So this again, this unintended consequence of targeting the wealthy in order to make them pay their
mm,
fair share
mm,
leads them to flying off. The golden goose has flown, and everyone else is left to pick up the burden. So ultimately, you're wondering if this is being done on purpose so the financial system can be reset and you effectively get a type of Marxism
yeah,
where the government take over.
yeah.
And to use a World Economic Forum phrase, you'll own nothing and be happy. Yeah,
Specsavers, of course, based in Guernsey, are
mm,
a good example of what you're saying, aren't they?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah, you really want to encourage me. If other governments are going through this ideological purge of getting rid of the wealthy, then we should, welcome with open arms. But I know there's an effect locally where people say that there's not enough housing, and that's true of many places. But the very wealthy won't be taking up sort of local market property; they'll be buying open market,
Yeah.
and hopefully getting some benefit. Again, a lot of people dismiss this trickle down effect, but if you look at here in Guernsey, you have various people undergoing major projects, not just Guy Hands, but this chap with his riding school as well.
Yeah.
You'll see
Yeah.
on the foot road if you ever come here. So there is a knock-on effect. Whether you've got enough builders to do things, or or cater for the very wealthy, or let alone for public projects, is another matter. But in a sense, it's a nice problem to have.
I've heard that there's a bit of a drift of financial services companies to Jersey from Guernsey.
Mm.
You got anything to say on that?
This has been a trend for a while, particularly in the banks. We're seeing them all um, effectively sort of coalescing to whichever one has the biggest outfit. That you'll tend not to have a presence in both
Hmm.
islands.
We can see the
Um,
reason for that.
and yeah, I mean, also got Brooks McDonald, international, expecting to be sold to Canaccord. That I can't see the Jersey presence there is bigger than locally. But on the same time, Guernsey and Jersey have their own specialities in fund administration that cater for different areas, and this is going very strongly, and it's going great guns with funds being launched. Also, I think half of the European corporate bonds that get issued come through the stock exchange here. So
Yeah.
it, there is some ebb and flow both ways, but where we have our own sort of USP, it seems to be looking pretty good. Yeah.
Hmm. And of course, Guernsey is probably one of the largest jurisdictions in the world that specializes in captive insurers.
Of course, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, which
that's
once again is a great asset, I would have thought.
yeah,
But there we
yeah.
are.
I mean, definitely, you shouldn't knock it. People often complain about the finance industry, but it has, net has a great deal of benefit. So, yeah, but overall, I'm pretty confident. As I mentioned before, but sad to see what's going on in
Yes.
a lot of Western
Yeah.
countries.
Yeah.
If we can benefit, that's great, and just hope we can kind of stay under the radar and not be a target ourselves for this kind of ideological attack. But who knows?
If only that crystal ball.
Yeah.
Toby, we've run out of time. It's been a
Oh,
great
thank you.
pleasure as ever to talk to you.
Thank you, Tony.
Next date in January.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So got that. They're
So,
already.
should I wish you a happy Christmas?
Yeah, yeah. See how the US elections go first.
Anyway, we're looking forward to Robert McDowell's feelings and thoughts
Yeah,
about the
I'll
budget
listen into
after
that
that.
one.
So we'll see
That's it.
about that. But in the meantime, many thanks for
Thank you, Tony.
being a really wonderful person in terms
Oh,
of
thank you.
keeping the whole thing going. Okay,
Oh, thank
thanks,
you.
Toby.
Cheers,
Cheers.
Tony.
Bye.